I sensed the wrongness before I even killed the engine. The homestead should have been sealed tight against the storm, a fortress of timber and steel designed to outlast anything the high Sierras could throw at it. Instead, the front door stood ajar, swinging loose in the wind. The snow had already drifted into the hallway, white ridges piling up against the dark wood floor. My stomach tightened. I didn't shout. I didn't run. Years as a wilderness EMT teaches you that panic is just another way to die. You observe. You assess. You act. I stepped inside, the cold hitting me like a physical blow. The air smelled of ozone and something metallic. The silence was absolute, heavier than the wind howling outside. Then I saw him. Grandpa Silas. 88 years old, a retired geologist who knew every vein of ore in these mountains, lying face down on the living room rug. His wheelchair was overturned a few feet away. His medical alert system lay smashed on the floorboards, wires exposed. Before we step further into the storm, pause for a second. If you had to choose one person you'd trust with your life in a crisis, who would it be? Drop their name in the comments. Let's honor the people who show up when it matters. I dropped my pack and knelt beside him. My hands moved automatically, bypassing fear, engaging the training that was now instinct. Airway clear. Breathing shallow, erratic. Skin pale, cold to the touch. Too cold. Grandpa, I said, my voice steady, professional. Can you hear me? He groaned, a low, guttural sound that barely reached my ears. I checked his pulse. Weak. Freddie. This wasn't just a fall. The house was freezing. I glanced at the thermostat on the wall. The display was dead. The backup generator should have kicked in the moment the grid went down. It hadn't. I stripped off my heavy coat and draped it over him, then began a rapid assessment. No obvious head trauma. No major bleeding. But his core temperature was plummeting. I needed heat. No. I ran to the utility closet. The breaker panel was open. The main switches weren't tripped. They were manually pulled. The wires to the generator transfer switch had been cut. Cleanly. Deliberately. This wasn't a storm failure. This was sabotage. I returned to Silas. I needed to get him off the floor. He was a small man, withered by age, but dead weight is heavy. I used a fireman's carry technique, leveraging my hips, and moved him to the couch. I piled every blanket I could find on top of him. Stay with me, Silas, I commanded. We aren't done yet. I opened my medical kit. I had chemical heat packs. I activated them, placing them at his axilla and groin, the key points for rewarming. But I knew the physiology. I knew the clock was ticking. In wilderness medicine we talk about the golden hour. It is that critical window where the body can still bounce back, where the metabolic cost of trauma hasn't yet bankrupted the system. But with hypothermia it is different. It is a thief. It steals your ability to clot blood. It slows your heart until it just forgets to beat. It makes your own metabolism turn against you, burning through reserves until there is nothing left but cold ash. Silas was in the danger zone. His shivering had stopped. That was bad. That meant his body had given up trying to generate its own heat. I needed to be his external heat source. I lay down on the couch behind him, wrapping my body around his, sharing my warmth. I held him tight, feeling the frailness of his bird-like bones. I've got you, I whispered. I'm right here. We lay there in the dark, the wind screaming against the eaves. I monitored his breathing, counting the seconds between each inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, I felt a shift. A tremor ran through him. Then another. He groaned again, louder this time. His shivering restarted, violent, racking spasms. Good. Painful but good. It meant his system was fighting back. I sat up, keeping the blankets tucked tight around him. I needed to know what happened. Who did this? I checked the rest of the house. The kitchen was untouched. The back door was locked. But in the hallway, the wall safe, the one hidden behind the old topographical map of the county, stood open. $85,000. Gone. Silas didn't trust banks. He kept his liquidity in cash and gold coins. All of it vanished. I walked into the guest room where my stepmother Patricia and stepbrother Kyle had been staying. The bed was made. Their luggage was gone. I pulled out my phone. 1 bar of service. Enough. I opened Patricia's social media. The most recent post was from 4 hours ago. A photo of a snowy road, taken from inside a warm car. The caption read, "Prayers for Silas. His dementia is getting worse and he's so stubborn. We're heartbroken we can't be there with him during the storm, but safety comes first. God watch over our patriarch." I stared at the screen. The timestamp. The wording. Dementia. Silas didn't have dementia. He was sharp as a tack, though he'd been forgetful lately. But Patricia had been pushing that narrative for months. Telling neighbors he was slipping. Telling the doctor he was confused. Building the alibi. Safety comes first. They hadn't fled the storm. They had used the storm. They had cut the power, stolen the money, and left an 88-year-old man to freeze to death in the dark, knowing the blizzard would cover their tracks. They expected to come back to a corpse and a grieving stepdaughter who would never question the tragic accident. Rage is usually hot. It burns. But this was cold. This was the kind of cold that snaps iron. I wasn't just a granddaughter anymore. I wasn't just an EMT. I was the only thing standing between them and the perfect crime. And they had made one critical mistake. They left me alive. My phone buzzed in my hand. Fisha. The screen lit up with her name, and for a second I just watched it, feeling the vibration rattle against my palm like an angry insect. Answer it, Silas rasped. His voice was stronger now, warmed by the blankets and the heat packs. He was sitting up, sipping warm broth I'd heated on a camp stove. Let her think she's in control. I hit accept. Riley. Patricia's voice was breathless, pitched high with panic. Oh, thank God. We've been trying to call for hours. Is the power out? We tried to check the cameras, but everything went dark. I looked at the cut cables dangling from the security monitor. Power's out, I said. My voice was flat. Generator didn't kick on. Oh no, she gasped. We were afraid of that. Listen, we got stuck in Vegas. The airport closed because of the storm. We're frantic. How is Silas? He's cold, I said. Very cold. Is he awake? No. I let the silence hang there. Let her fill it with her own assumptions. Let her imagine the scene she had orchestrated. The old man finally gone, the problem solved. Riley, listen to me, she said, her tone shifting. The panic was still there, but now it had an edge. A command. You need to get out of there. It's not safe. The roads are impassable, and if the heat is off, you'll freeze. You can't help him now. You need to save yourself. I looked at Silas. He was watching me, his eyes sharp and hard in the lantern light. He knew exactly what she was doing. She wasn't telling me to leave for my safety. She was telling me to leave so I wouldn't be there to revive him. So I wouldn't be a witness. I can't leave, I said. The truck is snowed in. Try, she insisted. Walk to the main road if you have to. Someone will pick you up. We'll send a team as soon as the weather clears to handle things. Just get out, Riley. Please. I'll try, I lied. Good girl, she said. Call me when you're safe. I hung up. She thinks I'm running, I told Silas. She thinks she's won, he corrected. She's a narcissist, Riley. In her mind, she's already spent the money. I'm just debris she has to sweep up. He shifted in the chair, wincing as circulation returned to his limbs. You know what the discard phase is? He asked. I shook my head. It's the end of the cycle, he said. First they idealize you. Then they devalue. And finally, when they've taken everything they can, they discard you. Patricia has been devaluing me for years. Telling everyone I'm losing my mind, isolating me, making me small. Tonight was the discard. She didn't just leave me to die, she erased me. He pointed to the wheelchair. Look underneath the seat. I knelt and felt around the metal frame. My fingers brushed against something hard and plastic. A small black box, velcroed to the underside. I pulled it out. A digital voice recorder. The red light was blinking. I've been recording for 6 months, Silas said. Every conversation. Every time she thought I was asleep or too confused to understand. I have her talking to Vance about the lithium. I have her planning the accident. I have Kyle bragging about his gambling debts. I stared at the device. This wasn't just evidence. It was a weapon. Lithium? I asked. The survey reports came back last year, Silas said. This ridge isn't just rock and timber. It's sitting on one of the largest lithium deposits in the state. Vance isn't a developer, he's a miner. He offered them $12 million for the rights. But he needed me out of the way to sign the deal quickly. He leaned forward, his voice fierce. They thought I was a senile old man, he growled. They forgot who built this house. They forgot I spent 40 years reading the earth. I knew what was under my feet before they even looked. The wind slammed against the house, a reminder that the storm was far from over. But inside the dynamic had shifted. We weren't victims anymore. We were hunters waiting in the blind. They're coming back, I said. Vance won't wait for the thaw. He needs to confirm the death before he can move the heavy equipment in. He'll want to make sure. Silas nodded. Patricia told you to leave because she knows Vance is on his way. She doesn't want you here when he arrives. Then let's get ready, I said. I stood up and went to the window. The snow was falling harder now, a white curtain erasing the world. But I knew this land. I knew every ravine, every choke point, every weakness. They think the storm is their ally, I said, turning back to Silas. They think it's going to cover their tracks. I picked up my gear bag. I'm going to show them what a storm really looks like. What about the authorities? Silas asked, watching me unpack the heavy-duty gear from my truck. Chainsaws, flares, tow straps. Lines are down, I said, checking my radio again. Static. Cell towers are overloaded or out of power. We're on our own until the storm breaks or I can catch a repeater signal. I handed him a ruggedized walkie-talkie. Keep this on channel 4. Stay low. If they breach the house, You lock yourself in the panic room you built in the basement. I'm not hiding in the basement, he snapped. This is my land. This isn't a negotiation, I said, my voice hard. You're recovering from hypothermia. You can't fight them physically. But you can be my eyes. Watch the monitors if the backup power holds. Tell me where they are. He grunted, accepting the radio. It was a concession, not a surrender. I stepped out onto the porch. The wind had shifted, coming straight down the canyon now, driving the snow horizontally. It was a whiteout. Visibility was maybe 10 feet. Perfect. Vance wouldn't be expecting a fight. He was a miner, a businessman who hired muscle. He wasn't a tactician. He'd come up the main access road because it was the only way for a heavy vehicle to pass. I pulled on my fire-resistant wildland jacket. It was bright yellow, designed to be seen in smoke, but in this blizzard, it would just be a ghost in the fog. I grabbed the chainsaw. I knew exactly where to drop the first tree. About a quarter-mile down the drive, there was a choke point where the road narrowed between a steep granite face and a sharp drop-off. A single large ponderosa pine stood on the edge. I trudged through the drifts, the cold biting at my exposed face. When I reached the tree, I didn't hesitate. I fired up the saw, the roar swallowed instantly by the wind. I cut a precise wedge, then the back cut. The tree groaned, a deep, mournful sound, and crashed across the road, blocking it completely. Step 1. Deny access. I moved back toward the house, working quickly. I used the tractor to push snow into berms around the perimeter, creating cover. I laid out the irrigation hoses, not for water but as trip lines buried under fresh powder. Then came the fuel. The homestead had a large diesel tank for the heavy equipment. I attached a long hose and ran a line along the edge of the clearing, soaking the brush in the woodpiles I'd staged. It wasn't enough to start a forest fire. The snow was too heavy for that, but it was enough to create a wall of flame. A psychological barrier. Riley, Silas's voice crackled over the radio. Headlights. Bottom of the drive. Copy, I said. Get to safety. They're in a plow truck, he warned. Big one. They're pushing through. I crouched behind a snow berm, flare gun in my hand. I saw the lights first, cutting through the white like lasers. Then the roar of a diesel engine. A massive black truck fitted with a V-plow surged up the road. It hit the fallen tree with a sickening crunch of metal on wood. The truck shuddered and stopped. The driver's door opened. Vance stepped out, dressed in an expensive parka that looked brand new. Kyle climbed out the passenger side, shivering, holding a rifle. What the hell is this? Vance shouted, his voice barely audible over the wind. Trees down. Get the winch. It's too big, Kyle yelled back. We have to walk. Fine. Grab the gear. Let's finish this and get out of here. They started walking toward the house. They were arrogant. They weren't checking their corners. They were just trudging through the snow, annoyed by the inconvenience. I waited until they were in the middle of the clearing, right between my fuel lines. Hey! I shouted. They both spun around, squinting into the storm. Who's there? Vance yelled. I stood up, the flare gun leveled. Get off my land. Kyle raised the rifle. Riley? What are you doing here? I said leave, I warned. Put the gun down, Riley, Vance said, stepping forward. You don't know what you're dealing with. This is business. No, I said. This is a felony. Kyle aimed the rifle at me. Don't be stupid, Riley. Just walk away. We can share the money, Patricia said. I didn't let him finish. I fired the flare. Not at them. At the fuel-soaked brush line behind them. The diesel ignited with a whomp, a sudden violent bloom of orange against the white snow. The fire raced along the line I'd laid, encircling them in a ring of heat and light. They scrambled back, terrified. The flames roared, melting the snow instantly, creating a wall of steam and fire. Drop the weapon, I screamed, loading another flare. Kyle dropped the rifle into the snow like it burned him. Vance fell to his knees, shielding his face from the heat. Radio check, I said into my walkie. Sheriff Boyd, do you copy? Static. Then a voice, clear and strong. Copy that, Riley. I see the fire. We're coming up the service road on snowmobiles. Sit tight. I looked at Vance and Kyle, trapped in their circle of fire, shivering not from cold but from fear. The storm raged around us, but for the first time all night I felt warm. I kept the flare gun trained on them. Don't move, I said. Or the next one isn't a warning. The sound of snowmobiles grew louder, a high-pitched whine cutting through the roar of the fire. Headlights swept across the clearing, illuminating the scene in stark relief. The wall of flame, the two men cowering in the snow, and me standing guard with a flare gun. Sheriff Boyd was the first off his sled. He was a big man, built like the mountains he policed, and he moved with a surprising speed. Two deputies followed him, weapons drawn but pointed low. Drop the rifle, Kyle. Boyd bellowed, his voice booming over the wind. Kyle didn't hesitate this time. He tossed the gun away and raised his hands, shaking violently. Vance just stayed on his knees, staring at the fire as if he couldn't believe it was real. Get them out of there, I told the deputies as they moved in to handcuff them. The fuel is burning fast, but the wind is shifting. It's going to get hot. They dragged Vance and Kyle away from the flames, hauling them toward the sheriff's sleds. I watched them go, the arrogance gone, replaced by the pathetic shivering of men who had underestimated everything. Then I heard another engine. A car struggling up the icy drive behind the snowmobiles. Fisha. She must have followed the sheriff, thinking she could still spin this. Thinking she could play the grieving widow one last time. She stumbled out of her luxury SUV, wrapped in a fur coat that looked ridiculous against the backdrop of fire and snow. She ran toward us, her face a mask of practiced concern. "Oh my God," she screamed. "What happened? Is Silas?" She stopped when she saw Vance in handcuffs. Her eyes darted to Kyle, then to me. The mask slipped just for a second, revealing the cold calculation underneath. "Riley," she said, pivoting instantly. "Thank heavens you're safe. I was so worried. These men, did they break in? Did they hurt Silas?" I didn't answer. I just pulled the digital recorder from my pocket and hit play. The audio was crisp, amplified by the cold air. "Just let the old man freeze, Patricia. It's cleaner. We get the lithium rights, you get the insurance, and the girl gets a tragic story. Everyone wins." Vance's voice, clear as day. Then Patricia's reply, "Make sure the generator is dead. I don't want any surprises. And keep Riley away until it's done. She's nosy." Patricia froze. The color drained from her face, leaving her looking old and gray in the firelight. That's manipulated," she stammered. "You faked that." "It's over, Patricia," Silas said. He stepped out onto the porch, wrapped in a blanket but standing tall. He looked at her with a mixture of pity and disgust. "I may be old," he said, his voice carrying across the yard. "But I'm not stupid. And I'm certainly not dead." Sheriff Boyd stepped forward, handcuffs ready. "Patricia Ellison, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, elder abuse, and fraud." She started to scream then, a shrill, ugly sound that had nothing to do with grief and everything to do with rage. She thrashed as the deputy cuffed her, spitting insults at Silas, at me, at the world that had finally told her no. "You ungrateful little witch," she shrieked at me as they shoved her into the back of a cruiser. "I took care of him. I deserved that money." I watched them drive her away, the red and blue lights reflecting off the snow like a bruise. The fire I'd set was dying down now, the fuel exhausted. The storm was breaking too. The clouds were thinning, revealing a sliver of moon hanging over the ridge. Sheriff Boyd walked over to me. "You okay, Riley?" "I'm fine," I said. "Just tired." "You did good," he said. "Your dad would have been proud. You protected this place." "I didn't do it alone," I said, looking at Silas. We walked back into the house together. The air inside was still cold, but the wood stove was roaring now, pushing back the chill. I made coffee, strong black, the way Silas liked it. We sat on the porch, wrapped in blankets, watching the sun come up over the Sierras. The light hit the snow, turning the world into a blinding sheet of diamonds. "So," Silas said after a long silence. "What now?" "Till we clean up," I said. "Fix the generator. Repair the window. Get you back to full strength. And then..." I looked out at the land. The trees were heavy with snow, bowing but unbroken. The air was clean, sharp, and full of promise. "And then we run this place," I said. "The right way. No mines. No developers. Just us." He smiled, and for the first time in a long time it reached his eyes. "I like the sound of that," he said. "Welcome home, Riley. Family isn't just blood, It's who stands with you in the fire. If this story reminded you of your own strength or someone you need to protect, share it. Let's remind the world that the quietest people often have the loudest fight.